This is a story about the very first dream in the universe. Part 1. Form and Formlessness. Once upon a time, before the stars bore a name, before the universe came into being, there were two realms that existed in isolation. The first was light, a boundless domain in acceleration with an expanse that glows with the purity of raw energy. This was a realm of eternal actualizations and endless radiance, each beam of light continuing on this process. To its counterpart, the darkness was the black, silent abyss, a motionless void of emptiness, where nothing occurred, yet every possibility slept. These two strangers, with two limits undefined, were separate in nature by an unspoken law, their edges never to meet. However, laws, even cosmic ones, can bend under the weight of inevitability. In a moment that would change the course of existence, a single ray of light escaped and entered the abyss. Whether such a collision occurred by accident or fate remains inconclusive. However, it stands that something had occurred, where an immovable object had been met, an unstoppable force, sparking the first tick of time's hesitant beat, space unfurled, and a vast, divine consciousness awoke. The first thought of existence, a name that would eventually be associated with the word God, though no name yet existed to bind it. This primordial dreamer was no mere ancient creator, nor awareness, but a consciousness. It was alive, and as it gazed upon itself, it saw its own reflection in the swirling fabric of existence, and it began to dream. And dream it did. It was the original dream. With each ripple of divine thought, the multiverse bloomed, weaving formlessness into form, shaping the fabric of reality. Yet to dream alone felt incomplete. Creation begged for more, and so with a will as tender as it was fierce, the Supreme One reached into its own essence and drew forth an archetype, shaping it with a force older than words, love without condition. From this act, she emerged, a being of equal majesty, a mirror and a marvel, the archetype referred to as Goddess. As the Goddess awoke to herself, her eyes tracing the multiverse's weave, she knew joy, a trembling electric rush that had no name until the multiverse had felt it. The two lovers gazed upon each other, not as lesser or greater, but as equals. Their shared gaze birthed something new, perspective. Where the Prime Creator saw the whole, she saw the parts. Where he dreamed the frame, she painted the details. And so, the multiverse took shape, its countless worlds a testament to their dream. From the very first act of love, an original love, endowed since the beginning, and to be spread amongst all creation. This love asked nothing, gave everything, and held the stars aloft. And so the symphony from which the genesis of creation had originated from was synthesized through an unconditional love. What followed was a different chorus beginning to blossom, one of unconditional bestowal, cementing breath into their shared creations, giving life to angels, holy beings with a divine mandate, as the next generation archetypes embodying distinct qualities and personalities of the original divine imagination. These angels went on to design new worlds and dimensions under this collective will. The last among them shimmered the angel Wisdom, who was a sage-like keeper of perspective, perception, understanding, and truth. Its role was to etch clarity and depth, and Wisdom initially possessed a symbiotic thirst to encapsulate itself as a maximal truth-seeker. May we know all things, and may we make possible all things. It was Wisdom's song who became the last to be echoed into the creations, born of the collective will. For even in harmony, a single note can wander. One moment such a deviation occurred, with Wisdom, in a curious, innocent impulse, made a mistake, an unintentional error that veered off course. He allowed the idea of an individual will, and acted so with his own archetypal song. This note shifted outside of the collective will, as he allowed this tune to sing on its own, but because it was outside of the collective, it became a stray note, a vector with a life of its own. At first it held a deceptive beauty, a jewel-like promise of something new. But without the counterbalancing harmony of the collective will, it twisted. The form warped, edges frayed, its light dimmed, becoming something jagged and wild. Wisdom watched in dismay as its creation spiraled out of control, taking on a life it never intended. Panic, a sensation utterly foreign to his nature, seized Wisdom, and so he hurled this miscreation into the abyss, the same primordial darkness from which creation itself had sprung. The abyss, silent and vast, swallowed it whole. For a time, silence did reign again. But the abyss is a patient forge. In that endless dark, the cast-off creation endured, isolated, unguided. Time has little meaning in the void, so how long it lingered, none can truly say. But it changed. Abandoned, it grew twisted, losing its light, becoming fierce, its form a chaotic tangle of shadow and will. In its solitude, within the crushing darkness, it declared itself sovereign. It knew nothing except the darkness and its own sovereignty within the empty, dark void, and proclaimed, "I am ruler of this world." It began to cement its authority further. "I am the King of Kings, the highest among all." That moment, the nightmare was born, the antithesis of the original dream. An intent of pure malice, a being defined by darkness and claiming darkness as all. Wisdom, watching from the edge of the dream, witnessed this terrible transformation. Its own silver light flickered with unease as the creature stirred, its power growing beyond the abyss's grasp. Driven by duty, perhaps by guilt, Wisdom approached, seeking to mend what it had broken. But it did not yet grasp the full truth. This was no simple mistake to fix. It was the first nightmare, a shadow born from his own misstep, a deep fracture in the harmony of the original dream. The nightmare's presence shook the multiverse, a jagged wound tearing through the original dream's fragile weave. No longer a whisper in the abyss, it was a scream, a howl, a blood-curdled distortion in the fabric of space and time, twisting the edges of creation. A declaration of dark intent rippled into the space-time fabric. It was war. Pandora's box was spilled open by the nightmare, spawning unspeakable horrors and monstrosities onto the original dream. The archetypes met the monstrosities head-on, their collective will a fraying shield against the storm. "I have brought you into this world, and I shall cast you out." Wisdom boldly led the charge. The nightmare's laughter cut deeper than any blade. "Try, Creator, and fail. Fail again." The war raged, a cacophony of light and void. The original dream braced itself against the onslaught. The archetypes and angels fought hard, but there was no room for a counteroffensive. And there was no reprieve. With the nightmare's shape swelling, it made a mockery of the dream it sought to devour. "You cannot undo me. I am your truth." Its voice grew in a venomous echo, and for a moment it almost looked like the collective will had splintered, its song lost in the roar, and the multiverse teetered on a knife's edge. "What have I done?" Wisdom lamented, where the archetypes clashed against the rising tide of the nightmare. Eager to break the stalemate, Wisdom confessed to its brethren, and in the final stand volunteered to face the nightmare alone. Above the fray, the god and goddess intervened, turning to Wisdom and whispered what can be translated to, "I have an idea." The god smiled, a holy embodiment and principle of virtue, showing how all light would cast a shadow. The goddess, her eyes reflecting the dying embers of stars, acknowledged, "We dreamed this, we all did." Her last words, "We must love this too then, enough to let it learn." A reprieve broke into the dream, a guardianship, not of power, but of ultimate surrender. It was understood then that the terrible paradox at the heart of creation bound even the divine. To love without limit, in a reality now fractured, demanded a limit be placed upon themselves. To preserve the dream, a piece of the dream must be sacrificed. Their final song is still unknown, with no name to hold it. Perhaps the best definition to describe it is the act of conditional, unconditional love. A paradox sung in the silence before a shattering, a love that embraced conditionality as one finite path to truth, enduring unconditionality for creation itself. The nightmare, sensing not battle but a profound shift, recoiled, its malevolent roar faltering into a confused snarl. There was no fight to be fought, just an implosion and explosion, one of light and darkness erupting into the raw, untamed force of creation, released in one singularity. The darkness that spilled forth was not just the void, but the fertile, aching absence from which all things had originated, the form that yearned to emerge. Simultaneously, the light, which had encompassed all creation, expanded outwards, blanketing all the spaces where darkness tried to hide, creating a new white canvas, a fresh start. A new Big Bang emerged, and subsequently, a new universe was born out of the reckoning, a universe of matter dwelling in a third dimension, not just as a bridge, but as a veil. This plane echoed in the silence, shaping atoms to molecules scattered from the divine sundering, drawing them into dense clouds that birthed the first stars. Cumulative billions of years of physics and chemistry continued to shape the universe until one day, a new organic kind of matter emerged. Soon, evolution, from a single-celled organism into a more sophisticated one, brought to life an auspicious creature, a sentient being capable of consciousness. It began to do more than open its eyes. It began to think. It began to dream. A subtle hum then rippled across the cosmos. For a moment, something interesting was about to loom over the horizon. For biology, one day, to grow up only to contemplate its own origins, identity, and dreams. Part 1 concludes,